A Gentle Spring in St. Petersburg by Julian Rhodes. The crisp air of early spring whistled through the streets of St. Petersburg, carrying with it the promise of warmer days ahead. Natalia Mikhailovna Vorontsova stood at her bedroom window, watching as the last patches of snow melted into puddles along the cobblestone streets. The year was 1837, and at 20 years old, she had already declined 3 marriage proposals, much to her mother's dismay. "Natasha," her mother's voice carried up the stairs. "The Baroness Stroganova's carriage has arrived." Natalia adjusted the pale blue ribbon in her dark hair and smoothed her cream-colored dress. The Baroness was known for her elaborate parties, but more importantly, she was known for her nephew, Alexander Dmitrievich Stroganov, who had recently returned from his diplomatic post in Vienna. The carriage ride was filled with her mother's usual gentle admonishments about proper behavior and the importance of making a favorable impression. Natalia nodded at appropriate intervals while watching the city pass by through the window. The grand mansions along the Nevsky Prospect gleamed in the afternoon sun, their windows catching the light like diamonds. Upon arrival at the Stroganov Palace, Natalia was immediately struck by the grandeur of the occasion. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across the marble floors, and the sound of a string quartet filtered through the crowded rooms. Ladies in silk gowns of every color imaginable moved like flowers in a spring breeze, while gentlemen in their finest military uniforms and formal attire engaged in animated conversation. "Ah, Katerina Petrovna." The Baroness Stroganova descended upon Natalia's mother with the enthusiasm of old friends. "And this must be your Natalia. My dear, you are even lovelier than I remembered." Before Natalia could properly respond, she found herself being steered through the crowd. "You must meet my nephew, Alexander Dmitrievich. He has been absolutely insufferable since returning from Vienna. Perhaps you can provide him with some proper Russian conversation to remind him of home." Alexander Dmitriev Stroganov stood near one of the tall windows, engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion about European politics with several other young men. As Natalia approached, she noticed first his height. He stood at least a head taller than his companions, and then the intelligence that sparkled in his green eyes as he spoke. "Alexander," his aunt interrupted, "I simply must introduce you to Natalia Mikhailovna Vorontsova." He turned, and Natalia felt her breath catch as their eyes met. He bowed perfectly, taking her hand with just the right amount of pressure. "Mademoiselle Vorontsova, it is my pleasure." "The pleasure is mine, Baron Stroganov," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Please call me Alexander Dmitrievich. I find that after 3 years in Vienna, Russian patronymics are a comfort to the ear." Their conversation began formally enough, with discussions of his time abroad and her interests in literature and music. But, as the evening wore on, Natalia found herself drawn into increasingly passionate debates about everything from the latest French novels to the future of Russian society. "Surely you don't agree with Chadayev's assessment of Russia's isolation from European progress?" Alexander challenged, his eyes alight with interest. "I believe there is value in both preserving our unique cultural heritage and learning from our European neighbors," Natalia responded thoughtfully, "though perhaps we should be cautious in discussing such matters too openly, given recent events." A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Ah, a diplomatic answer. You would have done well in Vienna." The weeks that followed saw Alexander calling at the Vorontsov house with increasing frequency. Their conversations ranged from philosophy to poetry, and Natalia found herself looking forward to each visit with an anticipation that both thrilled and frightened her. During one particularly memorable afternoon, they walked through the summer garden, accompanied by Natalia's younger sister as chaperone. The spring flowers were in full bloom, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of lilacs. "I've been offered another diplomatic post," Alexander said suddenly, his voice careful and measured. Natalia's step faltered slightly. "Oh, where would you be stationed?" "Paris." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "I haven't accepted yet." "Paris is beautiful in the spring, or so I'm told," she replied, trying to keep her voice light, despite the sudden heaviness in her chest. "I'm told it's beautiful in all seasons," he said, "but I find myself reluctant to leave St. Petersburg just now." Their eyes met, and in that moment Natalia understood the weight of what remained unspoken between them. The following weeks passed in a blur of social engagements and carefully chaperoned meetings. Alexander's deadline to accept or decline the Paris post loomed ever closer, and Natalia found herself torn between hope and fear. It was during a ball at the Winter Palace that everything changed. Alexander had managed to secure a waltz with Natalia, and as they moved across the floor, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. "I've declined the Paris position," he said softly, so only she could hear. "Why would you do that?" she asked, though her pulse quickened at his words. Because the most fascinating diplomatic challenge I've ever encountered is right here in St. Petersburg. His grip on her hand tightened slightly. I find myself in need of a partner who can navigate both social and intellectual waters with grace and wisdom. Someone who understands the delicate balance between tradition and progress, between duty and desire. The music swelled around them as they continued to dance, their steps perfectly matched. "And have you found such a partner?" Natalia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I believe I have, if she would consider a different kind of diplomatic posting, as my wife." Natalia missed a step, but Alexander's steady lead kept them moving smoothly. "That's a rather unconventional proposal, Alexander Dmitrievich. I thought it fitting, as you are rather unconventional yourself, Natalia Mikhailovna." His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Would you do me the honor of considering it?" The waltz came to an end, and they joined the other couples in applauding the orchestra. As they walked toward the refreshment table, Natalia spoke softly. "I would need to consider it carefully, of course. Such diplomatic matters require thorough deliberation." A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "Of course. Though I hope you'll not take as long as the Congress of Vienna to reach a decision." "I believe I can be more efficient than that," she replied, allowing herself a small smile. The following days were filled with formal visits, discussions with her parents, and careful negotiations about future arrangements. Alexander's family was pleased with the match, seeing in Natalia both the social graces and intellectual capabilities that would make her an asset to their family. It was during a quiet moment in the Vorontsov family library, under the watchful eye of Natalia's aunt, that she finally gave Alexander her answer. "I've considered your proposal carefully," she said, setting aside the book of poetry they had been discussing. "And?" His voice was steady, but she noticed his hands tighten slightly on the arms of his chair. "I believe I would find such a diplomatic arrangement quite satisfactory." She met his gaze with a mixture of affection and amusement. "Though I have some terms to negotiate." Relief and joy spread across his features. "Name them." "First, we must maintain our intellectual discussions, even when we disagree. Second, you must promise to never accept a posting without consulting me. And third," she paused, gathering her courage, "you must promise to always be as honest with me as you have been these past months." Alexander rose from his chair and moved to kneel beside hers, taking her hand in his. "My dear Natalia Mikhailovna, I accept all your terms without reservation. In fact, I insist on adding one of my own, that you continue to challenge my opinions and broaden my perspectives as you have done since the day we met." Their wedding took place that autumn, as the leaves in the summer garden turned to gold and crimson. The ceremony at the Kazan Cathedral was followed by a reception that brought together the highest levels of St. Petersburg society. But what Natalia remembered most clearly was not the grandeur or the celebrations, but the moment she and Alexander shared their first dance as husband and wife. As they moved across the floor, he leaned close and whispered, "Shall we consider this our first successful diplomatic engagement?" "The first of many," she replied, her eyes shining with happiness and promise. In the years that followed, Natalia and Alexander became known not only for their successful partnership but for their salon, which attracted the brightest minds in St. Petersburg. Their discussions and debates helped shape the intellectual landscape of their time, while their deep respect and affection for each other served as a model for a new kind of marriage, one based on both love and intellectual compatibility. Their story was often retold in St. Petersburg society, not for its drama or passion, but for its demonstration that true romance could be found in the meeting of minds as well as the meeting of hearts. It was said that even in their twilight years they could still be found in their library, engaged in spirited debates about literature, philosophy, and the future of Russia, their love having grown stronger through years of shared intellectual pursuit and mutual respect. And so their gentle spring beginning blossomed into a lifetime of partnership, proving that the most enduring romances are built not just on passion, but on the foundation of genuine understanding and shared values. Their story became a testament to the power of love that engages both the mind and the soul, a love that grows stronger with each passing season.